Does it feel like you are running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up? Does it feel like no matter how hard you work or how many promotions you get, you just can't seem to get ahead? You are not alone. Millions of Americans are waking up to a terrifying reality. You look at your bank account, and the number might be higher than it was 5 years ago. But when you go to the grocery store or the gas station or try to pay rent, you realize that money buys significantly less than it used to. You are being told that this is just bad luck. You are being told that inflation is temporary, or that it is caused by supply chains or corporate greed or wars overseas. But I am here to tell you that those are all lies. What you are experiencing isn't an accident. It is a feature of the system. You are the victim of the greatest heist in human history. But because there was no gun and no ski mask, you didn't even realize you were being robbed. Welcome to the Silent Depression. Let's look at the reality. In 1950, the average American home cost roughly 2 times the average annual salary. A single income could support a family of 4, buy a house, own a car, and save for retirement. Today, the average home costs nearly 8 to 10 times the average salary in many major cities. Now, both parents have to work full-time just to scrape by, and most people are one emergency away from financial ruin. So, ask yourself this question. Are we lazier than our grandparents? Are we less intelligent? No. We are more productive and efficient than any generation before us, yet we are poorer. Why? Because the very thing you work for, the thing you save, the thing you trade your life energy to obtain the US dollar, is broken. Most people use the words money and currency interchangeably, but they are not the same thing. Money must be a store of value. It must preserve your purchasing power over time. Gold is money. Silver is money. But the piece of paper in your wallet, that is currency. And the fundamental design of fiat currency is to leak value. It is designed to lose purchasing power, forcing you to run faster and faster just to stay in the same place. This is what I call the invisible tax. When the government wants to spend money they don't have, they don't just raise your taxes, because that would make you angry. That would make you vote them out. Instead, they print more currency. When they print more, every single dollar in your savings account becomes worth a little bit less. They are stealing value from your pocket without ever touching your wallet. In this video, I am going to expose the mechanics of this theft. I am going to show you the exact moment in history when the United States betrayed the middle class and sold your future to the highest bidder. We are going to look at the data, the history, and the cold hard math that proves the system is rigged against you. But more importantly, I am going to show you how to opt out. If you watch this video to the end, you will understand the game better than 99% of the population, and you will know exactly what you need to do to stop being a victim and start protecting your wealth. It all started with a lie and a signature in 1971. To understand why your grocery bill is doubling while your paycheck stays the same, we have to travel back to a quiet Sunday evening, August 15th, 1971. Most Americans were sitting in their living rooms watching TV, perhaps waiting for the show Bonanza to start, when their screens were suddenly interrupted by President Richard Nixon. He looked into the camera and delivered a speech that would fundamentally change the course of human history. He announced that he was directing the Secretary of the Treasury to take action to defend the dollar against the speculators. He said, and I quote, "I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets." Notice the word temporarily. That was 50 years ago. That temporary measure is still in place today. Before this moment, the United States was on the gold standard. This is critical to understand. Before 1971, every $35 printed by the Federal Reserve was backed by 1 ounce of physical gold sitting in a vault. The paper in your wallet was essentially a claim check. It wasn't just paper. It represented something tangible, finite, and real. This system imposed discipline on the government. They couldn't just print money out of thin air to fund wars or buy votes because they didn't have the gold to back it up. If they printed too much, other countries would notice. show up with their paper dollars, and demand physical gold in exchange. And that is exactly what happened. In the 1960s, the U.S. government was spending money like a drunken sailor. Between the Vietnam War and massive social programs at home, America was drowning in debt. We were printing more paper dollars than we had gold to cover. France saw this happening. They realized the dollar was overvalued, so they started redeeming their dollars for gold, practically sending battleships to New York to collect their bullion. America's gold reserves began to drain rapidly. Nixon had two choices. Choice 1, stop the spending, balance the budget, and restore economic discipline. That would have been the honest path, but it would have caused a recession and likely cost him the next election. Or choice 2, default on the promise. Change the rules. Break the link between the dollar and gold. He chose the default. In that instant, the U.S. dollar went from being money, a store of value backed by an asset, to being fiat currency, backed by nothing but the faith and credit of the United States government. The discipline was gone. The government now had a credit card with no limit and no bill date. They could print as much as they wanted, whenever they wanted. The immediate effect was catastrophic, even if it wasn't instantly visible to everyone. This is the moment where the data lines diverge. If you look at a chart of productivity versus wages, they grew together for decades. You worked harder, you made more money. But in 1971, the line split. Productivity kept going up. We got computers, the internet, automation, but wages flatlined. Why? Because the new wealth being created wasn't going to the worker. It was being siphoned off by inflation. The government realized they didn't need to tax you to pay for their mistakes. They could just print the money, dilute the currency supply, and let inflation act as a hidden tax that eats away at your labor. They stole the foundation of your financial life, and they replaced it with quicksand. But breaking the gold standard was only the first step. Once they had the power to print, they needed a way to force you to use this dying currency. They needed to make sure the world didn't run away from the dollar. And to do that, they created a system even more devious than the one they just destroyed. So, we established that the dollar is no longer money. It is a currency backed by nothing but faith. But here is the part that makes this a crime, rather than just a bad policy. You might be asking yourself, if the government is printing trillions of dollars, where is it all going? Why isn't it in my pocket? This is where the devious system I mentioned earlier comes into play. It relies on an economic principle known as the Cantillon effect. It is named after Richard Cantillon, an 18th century French banker who realized a simple, dirty truth about fiat money. It matters who gets the new money first. When the Federal Reserve prints $1 trillion, they don't rent a helicopter and drop cash over Main Street. They don't deposit it into your savings account. No, that new money is injected into the very top of the financial pyramid. The Federal Reserve uses that freshly printed cash to buy bonds and assets from massive commercial banks and financial institutions. This means Wall Street, hedge funds, and the banking elite get access to this new money first. And crucially, they get it at near zero interest rates. They get the money before it has circulated through the economy, meaning they get to spend it while prices are still low. So, what do they do with this free cash? Do they build factories? Do they hire more workers? Rarely. Instead, they buy assets. They buy up the housing market. They buy stocks. They buy farmland. This massive wave of buying pressure pushes the price of assets to the moon. This is why we see the stock market hitting all-time highs while the actual economy is crumbling. This is why BlackRock and Vanguard can outbid you on a family home. They are playing with free money. You are playing with your life savings. By the time this new money finally trickles down to you in the form of a slight wage increase or a government stimulus check, the game is already over. The money has circulated through the system. Prices for houses, rent, tuition, and groceries have already risen to absorb that new cash. Think of it like pouring honey onto a saucer. The honey lands in the middle first, forming a large, thick pile. That is Wall Street. Eventually, it slowly spreads to the edges. But by the time it reaches the rim, where you and I are standing, it is just a thin, sticky mess. This creates a permanent class divide. The rich, who own assets, stocks, and real estate, get richer because inflation pumps up the price of their assets. The middle class and the poor, who live on wages and keep their savings in cash, get poorer because inflation destroys their purchasing power. You are not just imagining that it's harder to buy a house than it was for your parents. You are fighting against a printing press that is actively bidding up the price of the American dream. You are running on a treadmill where the speed is controlled by a central banker who doesn't care if you fall off, but it gets worse. This system doesn't just steal your wealth. It forces you into a trap. To maintain your standard of living as prices rise, you are forced to do the one thing that guarantees you will never be free. You are forced to borrow. When your wages don't keep up with the cost of living, you don't just stop eating. You don't stop driving to work. You bridge the gap with debt. This was the masterstroke of the post-1971 system. They replaced income with credit. In the 1950s, debt was something you avoided. It was shameful. Today, it is a survival mechanism. Look at the average American wallet. It is filled with credit cards, not because people are greedy and want to buy flat-screen TVs, but because they are using Visa and MasterCard to buy eggs and milk. We have normalized a state of existence where you are constantly owing money for things you consumed last month. This is not freedom. This is modern-day serfdom. A serf works the land for a lord, keeping just enough of the harvest to survive, while the rest goes to the owner. Today, you work for the bank. You spend the first week of every month working just to pay the interest on your house, your car, and your student loans. You are running on a hamster wheel, generating wealth for the financial elite while you stay exactly where you are. And here is the terrifying part. The government wants it this way. A population drowning in debt is a population that is obedient. You can't protest, you can't take risks, and you certainly can't quit your job to start a business when you have a 30-year mortgage and $20,000 in credit card debt hanging over your head. You have to keep your head down and keep working. But recently, something changed. The system broke. For 40 years, the government kept this game going by lowering interest rates. Every time the economy got shaky, they lowered rates to make borrowing cheaper, encouraging you to take on even more debt to keep the spending going. But in 2022, inflation got so bad, the prices of gas and groceries went so high that they had to stop. They were forced to raise interest rates to stop the currency from collapsing. This triggered the doom loop we are seeing right now. Just like you, the United States government is addicted to debt. They owe over $35 trillion. When interest rates were at zero, that debt was manageable. But now, interest rates are up. The U.S. government is now paying more than $1 trillion a year just in interest payments to service that debt. That is more than they spend on the entire military. Think about the math here. It is impossible to pay this back. They have crossed the mathematical point of no return. They have two choices left, and both of them end the world as you know it. Choice A, they let the system crash. They stop printing money, the stock market collapses, pension funds vanish, and we enter a Great Depression that makes the 1930s look like a picnic. Choice B, they pivot. They turn the money printer back on, not just to stimulate the economy, but to save themselves from bankruptcy. They will print trillions upon trillions of dollars to pay their own debts. History tells us they will choose. Choice B, every failing empire in history chooses to print money rather than admit they are broke. Rome did it. Weimar Germany did it. And the United States is about to do it on a scale you cannot imagine. This means the inflation you saw in the last 3 years was just a warm-up. The real devaluation hasn't even started yet. The cash in your bank account is sitting in a burning building. So, the million-dollar question is no longer, why is this happening? You know why? The question is, what do I do? How do you opt out of a system that is designed to bleed you dry? How do you protect your family when the dollar loses its status? The answer lies in understanding the difference between currency and assets. So here we are. The system is rigged, the currency is dying, and the debt is mathematically unpayable. It sounds depressing, doesn't it? But it shouldn't be. Because chaos is also a ladder. We are standing at the precipice of the greatest wealth transfer in human history. When currencies collapse, wealth doesn't disappear. It just moves. It moves from those who hold paper to those who hold things. It moves from the unprepared to the prepared. The solution is not to try and fix the system. You cannot fix it. The solution is to step out of the burning building. You must stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a central bank. The first step is a mindset shift. You need to stop measuring your wealth in dollars. If you have $10,000 in the bank and next year you still have $10,000, you have lost money. You need to start measuring your wealth in purchasing power. How many ounces of gold can you buy? How many acres of land? How many shares of a productive business? The strategy is simple. Get off zero. Stop saving in the currency that they are printing into oblivion. Saving cash is like trying to store ice cubes in an oven. It will melt. Instead, you must move your savings into hard assets. What is a hard asset? It is something that cannot be printed. It is something that has zero counterparty risk. First, look at God's money, gold and silver. For 5,000 years, through every war, every plague, and every empire collapse, gold remains. It is the only financial asset that is not someone else's liability. When you hold a physical gold coin, you don't need a bank, you don't need the internet, and you don't need the government's permission to own it. It is the ultimate insurance policy against government stupidity. Second, look at land and real estate. They can print trillions of dollars, but they cannot print a single square inch of land. As the currency dilutes, tangible property acts as a shield, preserving the energy you spent to acquire it. Third, for those who understand the digital age, there is Bitcoin. It is the first time in history we have a digital asset with a fixed supply that cannot be manipulated by any government. It is the digital lifeboat for a drowning fiat system. The goal here isn't necessarily to get rich quick. The goal is to not get poor. When the reset happens, and it will happen, the world will be divided into two groups. The first group will be holding paper promises from a bankrupt government. They will lose everything. The second group will be holding real assets. They will not only survive, they will own the future. You now have the knowledge that 99% of the population lacks. You know the game is rigged. You know who the thief is. And most importantly, you know where the exit door is. The Federal Reserve is going to print. The politicians are going to spend. The dollar is going to lose value. You cannot control that. But you can control where you position yourself when the dam finally breaks. Don't let your hard work be stolen by inflation. Don't let your legacy be liquidated by a policy of theft. Take action today. Convert your paper into something real. If you want to navigate this collapse and come out the other side stronger, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. I will keep bringing you the history, the data, and the truth that the mainstream media refuses to cover. The heist is happening. Don't be a victim. Be prepared. I'll see you in the next video.